Hello, it's in the middle of our segments of part 1 and part 2 here with Karl. Welcome to Tuesday Truths, where we take the biggest moments from the podcast and turn them into something you can carry into your week. Today's truth comes from my conversation with Karl Waddell, who shares the story of his son River and the heartbreak that changed his life forever. But what stands out is what Karl chose to do with that pain. How he leaned into community, spoke openly about mental health and OCD, and built River's gift to raise awareness, fund SIDS research, and help families feel less alone. This is a reminder that the brain can spiral in grief, but it can also heal, adapt, and find purpose again. Let's get into it. Here's Karl. Before we dive in, I want to give a big, massive shout out to our now new proud sponsor, Eshu Skincare, a brand that truly aligns with leading our own way. This Australian-born company is dedicated to keeping skincare simple, effective, and straightforward. They've made waves in the US, even landed in Macy's and over 300 stores, and now they're back with a renewed focus on healthy skin and real results. If you want authentic skincare that fits your lifestyle, check them out in the show notes. Thanks to Eshu Skincare for supporting real stories and mental fitness on leading our own way. And if you're interested in sponsoring like Eshu Skincare, drop us a message. We'd love to connect. What is resilience to you connected to the journey you've been on?
I think, Andy, if I look at my journey and the experience that I've faced, it's really just facing hardship. You know, it's facing a roadway forward. And a lot of the time you don't know what that roadway might even look like, if there is one at all. And it's a I don't like to use the word grit and determination, but I just did. And that really is what it is. You know, it's facing it and thinking, well, I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know what next week brings, but I think resilience in my case, I look at a couple of people that I know in my life, and I think, well, I think I've had it tough, but I've had some incredible support and love and people around me, family and friends. But then, I look at this friend of mine who I think I mentioned to you recently that I was just helping him with a citizenship application. He's a refugee from Afghanistan. And I hear his story, and I'm just mind blown. It's jaw-dropping stuff, that chased by the Taliban and basically chased out of his own country and jumping on a boat and landing on Australian shores and living under a tarp for the first few months of his journey on his way here. And it's just incredible. But to answer your question, resilience really is about facing unexpected hardship in many ways. As a young boy, as an 11-year-old, and being the eldest of four children, and mum and dad are arguing all the time at home, and before I know it, they've separated. And so, of course, that was unexpected to me. I naturally, you think as an 8, 9, 10-year-old or even younger, you think, well, mum and dad are always going to be around. They're always going to be together. And of course they were around, but they weren't together. And then the other things that we'll speak about through, loss that I've experienced so close to home with the loss of my little boy. None of that's expected. I just felt a chill. In our instance, none of that was expected. It was a sudden infant death in sleep. And then you can even turn the page again to marriage separation. Alex and I parting in 2019, and it's I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought that, everything's not rosy, but we'll be together forever. It's all right, it'll happen. And then bang, there it was. So resilience, I think, is facing that hardship and really grinding in. And even though you might not feel you've got much in you, just believe in yourself and have faith that tomorrow will come around.
Yeah. So compared to obviously that day where you're just another parent putting their child to bed, to where you're at now with the knowledge that you've got and the research that you get involved with, what are some of the things that you can share with us today? Then I don't want to use the word prevent, because you, like you said, you did everything that would be normal. And I've got 2 children, and there were times that these thoughts came into my head. What if, but you've still done what you would normally do as a parent, right? There's listeners here now probably a bit, maybe they're a bit worried. I don't know. What's some of the piece of advice that you've learned? Research and what you've knowledge that you now have versus then. What's the biggest take, would you say? Or advice? I don't know. I don't know the right angle to come from, if I'm honest, Karl.
Yeah. No, and it's a topic that not many people are really used to talking about either. And I can see why you may not want to come at it from a certain angle, because you perhaps wouldn't want to, offend or say the wrong thing, although that might not be what you're experiencing. But I think, to answer your question, the greatest piece of knowledge I have and advice I can provide is to ensure that you're sleeping your baby in the safest possible environment, the safest possible way, because we don't know enough. We don't know enough about the pathological mechanisms and their breakdown, if you like, or the deficiencies at a metabolic, that very small pathological, physiological, minute level, and the amount of funding and research money that's being invested is so minimal. Like we're Australia's #1 SIDS research funding organisation, and we're incredibly proud to this year be funding just over $180,000 in Australian dollars towards 3 separate projects, 2 genetic projects and another that's more focused on education. So to us, that's massive, right? $180,000 is probably a little bit of money down the side of the couch at Parliament House in Canberra, but to us, it's huge.
Huge, yeah.
But back to the piece of advice is to follow safe sleep guidelines, to connect in with us at Rivers Gift and ask the questions around, how can we sleep our baby in the safest possible fashion and manner. And Red Nose likewise, they've got some great resource material there in order to prevent a sudden and unexpected infant death. Because scarily, Andy, the majority of those deaths that we're still experiencing across the world are actually not a pure SIDS death, they're more of a suffocation. So these little ones are being slept in an environment that is not entirely safe, and sadly they've had something come across their mouth and nose, or they might be face into something. So many of these incidents are actually avoidable by way of safe sleep practice. Now that's easy said, as we sit here at 9 o'clock at night and we're wide awake and we talk about this just through conversation. It's not as easy for a mother or father who hasn't slept for 7 nights straight because the baby's been crying all the time to always comprehend, well, how can I still do this in the safest possible way?
Of course.
It can be incredibly challenging. Those early parental years, I think you'll hear many people say they can be the most challenging of anyone's life. As beautiful as it is, if we're going without sleep nights on end, then it can really affect us mentally and emotionally. So, yeah, the biggest piece of advice, though, coming back, is to safely sleep your baby, and breastfeed as best you can. Just do all you can to breastfeed, because the nutrients in breast milk are really unmatched. And I'm sure you'll have many companies who are producing the formula try and convince you otherwise, but nothing really comes close to the organic magic of breast milk and safe sleep practice. So Anyway, so Jared Matthews said to me, "Yeah, Karl, I think you've got obsessive-compulsive disorder." And I'd never heard of it, And it turns out, and he said to me, "We'll need to medicate. We'll need to medicate and ensure," because I was highly anxious, right? I was pretty hyped up, pretty wired, And to me, though, him saying that we need to basically medicate you need to swallow tablets which are, minute little tablets with chemical form that's going to adjust the way that you're thinking and feeling, that was playing into my issue.
Yeah.
Right? That was like fertilising what my issue was.
Yeah.
So, because I didn't want chemicals to be controlling how I felt or who I was. I wanted it to be Karl, the soul, this sort of, this, for want of another description, not spiritual, but this soul. I wanted, because I was trying to, I always had a lot of pride in who I was through those teenage years, and I think through the experiences of mum and dad and being the eldest, I felt this strong sense of character and sort of spiritual form, if that makes sense, Andy. I just felt this strong identity with myself, and through active running and exercise, and I was doing okay with some running, getting some reasonable results. I found this strong sense of connection with myself, and then I studied this stuff, and that just diluted and washed away. I was like, is this all about chemistry? And that's pointless anyway. If it's all about chemistry, then what's the use? What does it matter? Free will, does that exist? No, it probably doesn't. Oh, well, so my purpose in life was just dissipated.
Yeah.
I felt like a shell of myself, and that was horrible. Like I could feel my heart sink. I just felt, just empty, And so I drove back from that psychiatry session back to my housemates, and I shared with him and his girlfriend that I'd been experiencing this stuff. Now, he didn't really understand it because it was very deep and complex, really, as a 19-year-old. And a lot of my peers and friends, and they didn't understand it. They knew that Karl wasn't well, and he was, thinking about high-level stuff. But this particular friend, he was great. He was very compassionate. And he was a wonderful person to have around. And that night, because I'd gone to bed, and I'm lying in bed, and my head was just bouncing. Like, have I got control? No, I haven't. Yes, have I? Just obsessing, about this brain chemistry and how much control have I got over all of it. And because I wanted to have control, I wanted to have the reins. And often the more control you seek, the less control you have, I think. The harder you try and throw that ball straight, it'll go offline. So the more you try at something, you probably know what I mean by that with a lot of stuff you do. If you don't just leave it be and flow. So, and that's where I was at, right? So I was trying to work out this answer, and my head was just bouncing around. And I stood up, and I thought, that's it. There's only one way. There's only one way that all of this is going to go, And, I had intentions of, just electrocution or something. I hadn't had an idea in mind that, I'd try and just finish it. And that night, there and then, I thought, I'm about to go and walk into the kitchen, grab a knife and put it in the toaster.
What you just witnessed is only a snippet of our amazing conversation this week. This is what Leading Our Own Way is all about. Real stories, real transformation. If you're watching this before Wednesday, part 1 dropped yesterday and part 2 releases tomorrow. But if you're already here after Wednesday, all parts are available now. Head to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and every other major platform and look for the numbers on the bottom left-hand corner of the episode's covers to start with part 1. Trust me, you don't want to miss this incredible journey.